This is just sort of a spontaneous review for the movie Watchmen, which I saw last night. Huge fan of the graphic novel, read it several times, and I'm certainly always aware of how difficult it was going to be to adapt, and maybe impossible. That's what I thought for a while. This is impossible. You can't turn this into a movie. And the past few weeks or months, I kind of been given hope of maybe someone's figured out how to do it. And I kind of for the most part, went in with the attitude of, no, they can't really get Watchmen, but maybe they can. Maybe I'm still hoping they can do a good job with it. Still be reverent to the book and still make a good movie, even if they can't capture everything about it. And what it turned out to be is, I'm not going to say I'm disappointed. You know, it's just sort of the past few weeks I've been maybe saying maybe somehow Zack Snyder has cracked the code of Watchmen. Maybe he's figured out a way to do it. Just maybe. I have no idea how, but maybe he's made some weird discovery and he's figured out how to do Watchmen. And having seen it now, I'm just kind of back to where I was, a year ago, where it's like, this might still be a cool movie and it might still be kind of reverent to the themes of Watchmen, but it can't possibly capture what it is that makes Watchmen great. That's kind of my review for the movie. This is an interesting situation where it's an adaptation that has many flaws, but I don't really want to blame anybody. There's nobody, it's not like I can point a finger at Snyder and say, oh, he messed this up, he screwed that scene up, or, oh, I can't believe he ruined this character, or he took out this scene, whatever. I don't feel like that at all. I feel like this is about as good of a movie as you can get with this running time, wanting to be faithful to Watchmen. I probably should say right now that I kind of look at this movie as a trailer for the director's cut that's going to be on DVD, which is, reportedly this was cut down from 3 hours and 10 minutes, and I can definitely see where this movie could be significantly improved by adding some scenes, or maybe extending the current scenes, giving it some breathing room. The fundamental thing, I hadn't quite viewed the book this way before, but the thing I can kind of realize about it now that doesn't work on screen is in the book, all the main characters kind of have their own chapter. Comedian has his own chapter, Manhattan has his own chapter, Rorschach has his own chapter, Night Owl, they've all got their one chapter where it's not a whole lot of story in that chapter, it's just character development. It's just exploring who these characters are. And because so much of Watchmen is about exploring, what kinds of people these would be, who would dress up in costumes and enforce their version of justice on the rest of the world. That's kind of the problem that other superhero stories completely ignore, that Watchmen confronts dead on. That's what the book is about. These people enforcing their own sense of justice, their own morals on the rest of the world. And so, all the character stuff in the book is so interesting. And it's an incredibly character-driven book. And there's, I guess, technically not a whole lot of story. The story itself is actually, like Snyder says, kind of simple. It's sort of like in the book, it starts off with the story, then it goes off into all this character stuff. Sort of like this big, long intermission in the middle. It's obviously an oversimplification. There are exceptions to that. But it's like there's this big, fat, 8-chapter intermission in the middle, and then it, then it finally concludes the story. In the book, that's so interesting, because that exploration of what kinds of people these would be. In a movie, it feels like they're going off on this rabbit trail, and I would think if you haven't read, it's kind of hard for me to view this with someone from the point of view of someone who hasn't read the book, but I would think I'd be thinking, what is this? Why are we spending all this time with Rorschach in prison talking to the psychiatrist? Why do we care about this backstory here? It didn't feel as relevant. I think that if you could add a lot more scenes, really this movie needs to be 4 hours long. If you could do that, then I feel the sort of the story to character development ratio would be a little more balanced. It just feels like the whole thing was nothing but talking about who these people are. And I think as a standalone film, you kind of feel like, why do we care? Again, I'm not blaming Zack Snyder for this. This is just something that's inherent to Watchmen. If there's one person to blame for this, it's Alan Moore, for writing this amazing book that, it just didn't work well for film, which I'm not going to fault him for that. That's good. The thing that Watchmen does is it does things that only a graphic novel can do. That's one of the cool things about it. So I'm not going to fault Zack Snyder for things that really couldn't be helped. Without significantly changing the story, you're not going to get a great movie out of this. Or an ideal movie, I should say. But basically this movie is a lot of really great, solid individual scenes with great cinematography, great acting. I like the choice of music. Really great scenes, but they don't really fit together very well. As far as the acting, Matthew Good surprised me. I really didn't think I was going to like him, but surprisingly, I just read a review at WatchmenComicMovie.com where he just described Matthew Good as, but he performs with a quiet confidence. I think that sums it up pretty well. It's not really how I imagined Veidt in the book, but he did play a nice part, and I felt it kind of came together at the end. My favorite actor was probably Morgan as Blake. I thought he played a really good part, great balance of that cynicism and depth, but getting that human element in there as well. And I thought Jackie Earle Haley was fantastic. I thought he was actually more effective as Rorschach when the mask was off, when he was actually Kovacs. I thought that was really... that was an interesting character. The ending, of course, we knew the squid was out. The ending... I understand Zack Snyder's argument for it, that it would require a lot of setup, a lot of screen time, that screen time you wanted to spend on other things. But, I don't know, it didn't quite make sense to me. Thematically, it's still there, but I just don't feel like it would work as well. It just doesn't make as much sense as the squid, was kind of my feeling. I mean, if it was a longer movie, it was like a 4-hour movie, you could kind of explain the squid and make it work, make it understand, make people in the general audience understand, then it'd be perfect. But it's one of those things where I don't really have a better solution to it, so I don't want to harp on it. I don't know what else they could have done. There were a lot of little things that Snyder was trying too hard to please fans, like Budapest, what's Veidt's cat, I can never pronounce the name, Veidt's little genetically engineered cat thing, just kind of thrown in there, and a lot of people in the audience I saw with just kind of went, what? There's sort of this nervous chuckle of, what the heck is that? And it's just, without the squid, why do you need that? Like, that's just kind of a cool little, that's kind of factors into, that's part of the squid story, where he's like genetically engineering this crazy creature. Without the squid, why do you need that? It's completely pointless and random. So there were definitely some little things where it's like, Snyder, that's nice, but it's not really that big of a deal. It would have been better to leave it out. My favorite part of the movie, I thought the opening credits were pretty cool. As far as the action, that was another concern. This is not an action film. That's a relief. This is definitely not an action film. The action is obviously kind of stylized. It's sort of a. There are definitely some like superhero-y kind of, not really Matrix-y, but kind of that stylized moments. But the difference basically is that they really, like Snyder's been talking about, they show the consequences of what happened. Like, they don't just punch a guy and have him fall down. Now you punch a guy and you see blood. You see the result of the consequences of this. It's probably overdone a little bit, I think. There were some parts where, like, when little Kovacs bites the guy's cheek off, like, that's kind of in the novel, but did you have to make, like, a whole, like, 5-second shot out of it? I didn't really see the point of it. Another part was, for the most part, I like the choice of music in here, all the 70s and 80s songs they picked. And a lot of people, I think I've read some criticism online of the choice of music for the sex scene on the owl ship with that Hallelujah song, and I thought it worked pretty well. I thought it made sense. Like, this is Dan becoming a man again. This is Dan feeling like he's complete, like he's back. And so I thought it felt really appropriate. And I actually thought it was a pretty solid sex scene, for the most part. The whole movie feels so rushed. All those little shortcuts, like Rorschach getting his face back, in the prison and everything. And the movie is extremely rushed, which I was kind of ready for. And they cut a lot of stuff out of the book, obviously. This is all sounding very negative. Overall, I give the film the thumbs up as an adaptation. I was like, this is interesting. It's the kind of movie where it probably kind of stick with you, I think. And a lot of the problems couldn't be helped. I do think it'll be a significantly better movie. I'm predicting it'll be a significantly better movie on DVD. And this is just sort of a trailer for that. So I'm sure I'll post another review for the DVD, and I can put some more thoughts on it there. But overall, I do give the film the thumbs up. I think they did a good job as could be done with Watchmen with this running time. But I am looking forward to seeing the DVD and sort of seeing how the story plays when it has more breathing room. So I'm certainly looking forward to the real cut of Watchmen.